How did an Oregon duck end up in Tar Heel country?
Welcome back to another episode of Through the Lens of the EMS Wizard podcast. If you haven't already, please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. You can also visit our website at emswizard.com for more information. Now we'll pick back up where we left off with our conversation with Chief Lamphiear of Gaston County EMS.
Well, I tell you, it isn't because you don't tell them what to expect. I mean, just from the conversations, your web page, I know you say it's outdated. Hey, look, it might be, but I know about 90% of EMS web pages don't meet this one. So just to lay out the expectations to come. I know what Gaston expects. I know just reading that. And to me, that's why I wanted to ask on that page, did you write, is that something you wrote? And it's obvious you did. So it was sort of rhetorical. How could you not want to work for someone like you, Chief? That's what I would say.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say I'm not for everybody, and maybe Gaston EMS is not for everybody, but we got a great group of people who believe in the vision and who, every day you want to talk about workload. I mean, these people are getting their behinds handed to them every day, but they're very resilient and great clinicians, and they just kind of like keep coming back for more, I guess, because they feel like they're somewhere that they can all be together as a team. We're looking forward to, a couple of my guys went to EMS Officer 1 and they were like, hey, we should do this. And I kind of put it off, I'll be honest with you, but now we got you scheduled for all of them for 2025. So
Yeah, we're excited. Hey, we did, I think Mark and Terry came down there to Gaston Community College and did a class or two. I can't remember. Was it just one class?
Huge class.
It
Yeah.
was a big class at Gaston because we did there and then we went to the jail to go do a class there. That's why it feels like two, because it was actually three that I tagged out and Mark continued. But I remember because the guy that had the key to the tractor trailer the other night was one of the people who was in the class, and I feel like he's been in an Officer 2 class somewhere too. But I remember him. I remember where he was in the room, that he was towards the back on the right hand side, and getting him and the Gaston people were very engaged. That was probably in my top quarter of list of classes. Great location, great mix of people, and great engagement of people. So yeah.
very good. Well, we're looking forward to it.
Good deal. So, Chief, give us a little bit about your personal journey, background, influences, things that made you say, I want to do this.
So when I was a little kid, very little, I used to watch reruns of this show called Rescue 8. And I don't know if our TV was black and white or the show was black and white or both of them were, but I'm talking like way back, right? And I always loved that. And I grew up in this small town in Oregon, and one of the main streets was about a block above my house. So when I was old enough to ride a bike, whenever the ambulance would go by, I'd ride up to the hospital, which was like 5 or 6 blocks above my house. And I'd sit across the alley, the ambulance entrance from the hospital, and wait till the ambulance came in. I was just found that fascinating. And I used to go down to it was a volunteer fire department that had the ambulance in our town. And I used to go down there whenever I could and look at the ambulance and the fire trucks. And I remember some of the old ones they had, Cadillac and then International and then later a Pontiac and stuff like that. But when I was about 6 years old, my family went on a vacation to California, and my mom rode ahead to the Los Angeles Fire Department so I could go on a tour there. And I remember doing that. And that's particularly notable because when I went to paramedic school, we actually went to Los Angeles to do our paramedic internship. And it wasn't the same station, but it was pretty cool to go back where I'd been, at least in the same department where I'd been visiting when I was 6 years old. So thought that was cool.
So you were literally inspired by Johnny and Roy-ish people.
Yeah. They were the people that inspired Johnny and Roy, I think. But yeah, it's really old. You can find it on the internet, but it's really old.
Yeah, I just looked it up on Wikipedia, and it premiered in 1958 and ran for 2 seasons.
Yeah. So I didn't get to see it till they were reruns. I'm not that old, but I'm pretty close. Anyway,
Well, Mark Casey's parents weren't even born then yet, so
one of them was. Yeah, one of them was. He was 4 years old.
And parent.
Anyway, I joined an Explorer post after Boy Scouts. I joined an Explorer post that did search and rescue. It was through the sheriff's office, and I met some of the folks that worked on the ambulance. So the summer after I graduated from high school, I started working part-time on the ambulance, and I always loved that. And I went away to college, but I missed being in EMS. So dumbly, I quit college to come back to work in EMS. And I paid for that for many years later because I was going to night school when I had kids at home and things like that. But
Hey, Chief, what's some of your personal viewpoints as a status of EMS management, the industry as you've seen it, kind of in the past and kind of in the future? You kind of tell us about that viewpoint.
What's changing in management? I think obviously the generational issues and how people want to be managed or led. People have a lot better work-life balance than we used to have. I mean, it's why there's so many second marriages in EMS, because we were married to our jobs, right?
right.
Go ahead.
No, right. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on number 3.
But work-life balance, I think, is a lot more important to people. As we have all of the pictures of our employees, although we're missing some of the new ones right now, up on the wall. And one of the things, what it says underneath it is EMS, not just a job, it's a calling. And I truly believe that. I think what people want, Jim's magazine put out that, I think it was Jim's, it might have been EMS, but what paramedics want in 2023, the survey. But the best I can tell, people want the opportunity to do their best. They want great equipment. They want great protocols. They want some autonomy, and they're willing to work. They want an opportunity to do their job, to use their skills and their knowledge. One of the things we have that I think is really important is we have a career path chart. So you remember the old board game of life, where they have the little cars and the pegs put in.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a career path. We have one for EMTs, although it's fairly simple. We have one that we're starting to flesh out a little bit more for management staff, but the one that's the most done is for paramedics, and it basically leads you, if you want to go from a new paramedic to a crew chief, to an FTO, to a preceptor, to a lead worker, to a master paramedic. These are the classes you have to do, and these are the steps you have to take. And one of the things we did is implemented, and some people don't like this, we have 4 pay levels for paramedics. A paramedic 1 is a certificate paramedic. A paramedic 2 is an associate degree paramedic. Paramedic 3 is a bachelor's degree paramedic. And then any of those 3 levels can work towards obtaining master paramedic, which is another step up in the pay grade. They have to go through a number of steps.
It's very career ladder and very I think when you look at larger fire departments or other organizations, large law enforcement agencies, that career ladder to say, how do you get from point A to point B, that NEMS is still like a mystery out there.
Absolutely. And I've actually helped a couple people write a plan, sort of a progression plan. Tell me what you got. I'll help you figure out what you need to keep going. But one of the other questions is, back then, so to speak, in the EMS industry, we always did what we thought was right. We had no data. We had nothing to back that up. We just did it because we thought it was right. And now, of course, we're very data driven. And I can remember one of the things we used to do was give intracardiac epi and intracardiac calcium. And later it was found that the calcium would cause tetany, but we were like masters of giving IC injections, right?
Right.
And
I found some of them old epi needles a while ago. Probably been about 5 years ago that I found some of those that were stashed.
Yuck.
3.5-inch needles.
Yuck.
Right. In a gray box, Terry. Not a brown box, a gray box.
It used to be white, but it's so old. Chief, is there anything that you wanted to highlight with your agency? Y'all are doing a whole lot of things. Is there anything that you want to, that long career, any stories that kind of pop to mind?
One of the things I got to do in Oregon that I think helped me get hired here as the director was I was part of the Oregon trauma system back in the early 90s. And I was on this committee called the Systems Assurance Group. That was my EMS role. And then I had also gone even back then to the National Fire Academy and done a management of EMS class. I think I did that in like March of 1990 or something. But I think those things and my education, you talk about what qualifies you to be something. And I'm not saying just an education does, but when I came to work here, there were only 2 people in the department that had any kind of degree. I had a bachelor's degree, and the guy that I later made an assistant chief had an associate degree, and no one else in the entire department. I'm sure they're working in college classes, but no one had completed that. So I think as we move forward, that formal education is going to be more important. And some of these other things, like North Carolina EMS officer, is going to be more important. Some of these other avenues of education to teach people, how to be a leader and how to be a supervisor. In our operations office, we have up on the wall in big letters, it says, manage things, lead people.
Yep.
So that's one of the things that I like. But
do you know what the percentage is of your people that have degrees now versus don't? Or even if you look at supervision?
Not right off the top of my head, but I would say that it's well over 50%. And some of those are not just associate degrees, and I think that's a great step, but bachelor's degrees and some master's degrees. So that's been a big change over the years.
Yeah.
See, you talked about my first boss, or we talked about my first boss. He told me when he hired me that he wanted me they'd had some problems before I got hired. And he said, I want you to make this EMS service the best it can be. One of the first things we did was pursue accreditation. And that was really questioned by a lot of EMS agencies around the state. Like, so what does this get you and why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I knew about that from Oregon, and we pursued that almost as soon as I got here. We started working towards that because the important part of that is the process of what they make you go through and how you have to build up your own agency to become accredited. It wasn't like, hey, we got this seal. The important part is is what you have to do to get there.
Hmm.
And it took us a couple years of 2 or 3 years of work to make that happen, to set the stage for that. And I think we were the first accredited agency in the state in 1995.
And what was your driving force behind that? I mean, what was the reason? Is that what they expected in Oregon, and you just brought that in with you, or?
It wasn't an expectation in Oregon, but you know, back when I worked in Oregon, one of the things that I loved where I worked. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, but we're talking about days where when the state came to inspect your truck, you had to meet outside of town and switch equipment from one truck to another, so both trucks would pass.
You sure that wasn't North Carolina?
It sounds familiar.
You've just
Oh, very
described a couple
Eastern.
North Carolina agencies. Yeah.
I hate to say that, but I mean, I've sort of said to myself, I would never, if I ever get the chance to be in charge of a place, I will never let that happen. So I think it was like driven to be the best. I'll tell you another sort of little analogy is the Regional Council of Governments used to be very active in EMS, and the Central Line Council of Governments was also that way. And when I came to work here and I went to the first Region F Central Line Council of Governments EMS meeting, they introduced me, and this guy, I won't tell you which county he was from, but anyway, he said they had to go all the way to Oregon to find someone who hadn't heard about Gaston County. And so I sort of made it my mission to make him eat his words, I guess.
Negative motivation.
Yeah.
In EMS, that's
Exactly
yeah.
works. It works. Makes success.
Right.
And Mark, what are some of those things that you had to go through to get accredited?
Well, you have to have all kinds of policies, like lots of different things. You have to prove loop closure, from incident reports and how they're reviewed. And so we had to build a lot of infrastructure in terms of policies and processes, not necessarily equipment, but policies and processes to be able to get there.
And how long is accreditation good for before they come back and reaccreditate?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, it used to be 3 or 5, and now it's 3 years for everybody, my understanding.
And John, everybody whines about coamps.
Huh.
And we're 5 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're getting ready to have them come back in July of this year.
Do you know how many are accredited in North Carolina by chance?
I think it's 5, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Hmm.
Anyway, so here's my, you want to talk about my career. It reminds me of the Bruce Springsteen song, Glory Days. Because looking back, it's like, glory days.
You're still having glory days.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're in the middle of the glory days.
Right.
I don't think that's a look back. I think that's a look at where you are right now, because all the tools that you keep adding to the toolbox, where some people might say, hey, that's a neat toy, kind of like the conversation that we had, but
Right.
it's all in that utilization and how it's built, and your people are trained to have it. It's a toy if it just sits over there and we only pull it out once a year, but it's a tool if we're practicing with it, if we're deploying with it, and
Right.
and helping our community with it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the tools that I got called on was we have some ATVs and some UTVs, 2 motorcycles. We use largely for searches. We go out on all the missing person specials, which is like old people with dementia or kids and things like that. We also go to a lot of homeless camps. And so that's why we have those tools. But I always have to correct people when they say toys and say they're tools, But at any rate, I'll tell you a side story, and I hate to take up more of your time, but I I went to the audiologist because I had started having this ringing in my ears, and they put me in a hearing testing booth, and they got me out. I'm in my uniform because I went during the day, and they said, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you, you have some hearing loss in both ears, and it's worse in the left." And they said, "Have you ever worked around heavy equipment?" And I'm looking down at my shirt, and I'm like, "I've been listening to sirens for 40 years, you know." But I remembered when they said that, the siren speakers used to be behind us. And also, whenever we run in emergency traffic, we always cranked up stereo and rolled the windows down. So the fact that it was worse on the left didn't surprise me, you know? Anyway, those were some good
Interesting.
times.
Makes sense. So, Chief, we've talked a lot about, the history and where you've come from and everything. And with the wisdom that you've kind of collected over the years, I know you have a very good viewpoint on what the future of EMS should look like. So, what's your perspective on the future of our profession overall?
I think we're going to be doing more telemedicine. Technology is going to continue to improve. We're going to have to figure out a way to do more desirable shifts. I just put out a survey this morning because we're having trouble filling our night shift spots, and we're going to have to figure out some incentives to be able to fill those willingly instead of forcing people into those. One of the things we really struggle with is workloads, because our people are, if you look at what the unit hour utilization should be, the top of it should be at 0.5 or 0.55, and we only have about, of each 168-hour week, we only have about less than a fourth of them that are under the 0.55. So our people are literally running their tails off, and it's really taking a toll on people. We talked about being data driven, but I think there's a paradox to that as well, because everybody says they want to be data driven, but when the data says they should do something different, sometimes they don't want to be data driven so bad, right?
Right.
So
everybody wants that data till they don't like it.
That's right. Exactly. I think we're going to be more regional, and I think one of the ways we've survived is using more BLS folks where we usually would have ALS them. We're being a little more, we're not doing less care for people. We're just maybe using those more appropriately.
Yep.
One of the things that we've been wanting to do was use dictation on our call reports, and I was sort of excited to see ESO was moving that direction. Anyway.
Well, in about 6 years, I'll probably have it ready.
Yeah. If it's like everything else.
First quarter.
Yeah, that's right.
First.
Anyway, I think as far as EMS, I think EMS is a calling. I told someone recently and I wasn't saying it meanly like it's gonna sound, but if you don't love EMS, you're not gonna do well in EMS. You gotta love EMS. You don't have to like every minute of every day, but you gotta love EMS. And the other thing I'd say is, you want to work in EMS, you got to have heart. I don't think you can survive, or at least survive happily, if you don't love EMS and if you don't have heart. So thank you very much.